Welcome to DMs of the PM. Well, if you don't know why we call that, well, it's because we are DMs and we talk in the PM and we upload at night. So our talks happen at night, we upload at night, and you all are going to have a good time. And I am your host today, Kiko. I go by Kiko.
Woo!
And over to my other guest slash hosts, we have Lex Martin.
Hello, I'm Lex Martin. Good to see you all.
And Robin.
Sus, thank you very much for having me. Really appreciate it. I'm Robin. Hi.
Thank you. And the first thing we're going to be talking about, because we like to talk Dungeons and Dragons, and we are DMs, so basically this is always on our minds 24/7. And one of the biggest things that we think about is world building. But specifically with world building, we're going to talk about one of the most important factors, and that's towns and settlements. And to be fair, towns and settlements are sometimes seen as kind of like, I wouldn't say the heart and soul of your campaign, but it's really what helps breathe life into your campaign beyond just your players. So with that being said, I'm going to say that we'll hand it off to Lex first.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask you a quick question on like, what do you view a town and settlement as in D&D? As some sort of valued piece in your DMing storytelling?
Well, I mean, the first things first is that I like to use it obviously as a way to, one, like kind of give you a sense of the spacing of the world. I mean, that's at the most simple level. That way you know, okay, so-and-so town is to the east and this is to the north. That way people can have something to refer to. But then you kind of have to allow it to grow into the opportunity to be something of a character in its own. Like, I feel like the towns and the settlements end up having a personality, and whether it ends up like this city ends up becoming pretty much the home base for your crew. And you know, they know that this city is filled with all of their original like characters that they've met, all the original things that they've done that kind of started their party, and it gives them something to fall back to, and also something to potentially fight for if the threat comes against them. And then everything outside of that gives a chance for you to just expand the world and you know, kind of be their own little mini sandboxes in your giant sandbox of a world.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And Robin?
Yeah. Plus one to all the things that you said, Lex, because honestly, we pretty much have similar world building style. I'm more of the kind of person that does a lot of improv. So what I actually do is, I'm not good at content creation. I know you are. You get a lot of inspiration from media in general, whereas me, I go on a blank slate. So it's like, I consider it cheating, but it's not really cheating because everyone has their styles, but I do a lot of generators. So what I usually do is I go for a macro point of view. So macro is pretty much the world. So that's my version of world building, and I just go top down. And from the world, like, as I click on each generator world and see what kind of sticks to my mind, that's when I kind of like, oh, I like this one, and I grab that. Oh, I like this one, and I grab that. And then I kind of do a Frankenstein world of a bunch of other random generators from other random websites. And then I kind of flesh out what I like about it in terms of pantheons, in terms of towns within that world, in terms of that town and specifically. And I even like make it a little bit different on what I create, depending if it's a one-shot or campaign. But yeah, that's my world building. It's very RNG style.
Yeah, I've always seen, that's actually brilliant for both of you guys. I actually always see towns and settlements as, for a lot of people, a lot of DMs, as like their first impression or the first impression for the players from the DM.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times, a lot of campaigns start in a town, start in a settlement, or they're going to a town or going to a settlement.
Yeah.
So a lot of times your first impression to your players as a DM is the town that they're going to. And I always go by the main thing. For people who are building towns, I always think of the main things. You need a place for people to eat and sleep. You need a place for people to shop, and then also you need a place for depending on the party, a place to pray. If that is you know, if you have a cleric or a paladin in the group, or even just somebody who's an acolyte or just has some sort of religion.
Mm-hmm.
Like you brought up pantheons, which is really great.
Mm-hmm.
When we get into like more of like the details of your town. And what I'll say here is that for people building, I'd probably highly suggest, and I'm pretty sure you all agree with, is only go in depth into detail on towns you know your party is going to be exploring. Not don't get too crazy with just detailing everything.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel that. That's also why I kind of stay away from established modules, because established modules already have created their own kind of thing that you might not even touch upon, but you kind of have to learn just because it's a module. Then that's my mistake as I made as a DM, is that I actually created a whole ass city, and my characters only explored about a quarter of that for the past 5 sessions. And I'm like, why do they even dedicate like about a weekend just for that city creation? It's like baby steps, you know.
Yeah.
I realized that I just need to create bits and pieces, enough for them to see, but not too much. That's all.
And that's also a lot of like taking into consideration like how being careful about how much you plan. I mean, like if you have the time and you want to go to detail, and you can be like, hey, like if they go and they touch this, great. If not, that's just for the fact, like the sake that if you were asking about this city, I can talk about it. That's great.
Yeah.
But like, you know, just to keep your sanity and time constraints, I do the same thing. But I try to kind of plan like regions like outside of my settlements where it's like, okay, like if it's a settlement in this region, most likely they're going to know about this overall conflict that's in this region. But for what's going in that town they could be fighting a monster, there could be a demon possessing somebody, there could be like internal trouble, but that comes when you know they're going to get there.
Yeah.
But at least that way you can say, oh, in the north there's like a gang war happening, or in the south they have, you know, pirates in the bay. So that's the most I say about like planning.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, perfect. That's actually really perfect because that's kind of what I did for my world. Like I started off thinking about it like from the top down, like from the biggest part, and then
All go on to
minimizing
the
it all the way
tiny
down to the
thing.
littlest
Yeah.
part. So I always go like, oh, okay, what's this region about? Then what's this section of this continent about? Then what is like the like what is the town like?
Mm-hmm.
Because of the surrounding effects of like what are the values and what's going on story wise
Yeah.
with the region. Yeah, so brilliant.
Yeah, I one yeah, and other than that, I know like I was one of those people who, when I started creating a world, I really didn't know how to answer how do you create a world. Like there were probably vague questions there that will help you out, but for the most part, I actually kind of started in World Anvil. I don't know if this is kind of like promotion about it. Worldanvil.com. It's
We're not sponsored, by the way.
we're not sponsored by it. We're just talking about because we like it. But this is pretty much a website that, like D&D Beyond for characters and adventures, World Anvil is for actual worlds, where if you just create a random world, it will ask you a series of questions like population, government, currency, majority demographic, trade routes, stuff like that, that things you wouldn't even know to ask or to answer. So like those are the things that you want to kind of inspire yourself from. So coming from that, what I tend to do is I don't want to answer all of that, but I kind of know the general gist of it just because I know my city long enough. And then that's as long as you can answer from your players, hey, if they ask you this, and you can answer top of your head just because you know the skeleton of it, they will in a way help you fill it out. You don't have to be too scared to like, oh shit, maybe I missed this. Like improv a little bit, get inspiration from your players. Yeah, that's for mine.
Yeah, that's actually really good. Lex, do you have any other additions to that?
if we're going to promote other things that we're not sponsored by, but
Yeah.
we just want to promote, Incarnate is a great way
Yes.
to get yourself into some structure of map building, and it's so quick. It's so quick and fast. Like I tend to hand draw to get my original sketches down, but like it has a really quick and easy way. I mean, for you to kind of just use their format and build the world, and that's a great way to really just be like, you know, here's a continent, don't know fully what's going on there, but I have the gist of it, and that'll help with your story building, and then it'll just go on as time comes on. Like, and I think there's a bit of like wonder in like just like building your world and having land masses and all these names and not knowing what's there, and then you yourself are discovering it at the same time as the player. So, but Incarnate, great way to get yourself structured and get some kind of overall sense of space.
I
We are
actually
not
want. I
sponsored
actually
by
wanted to
you.
ask you that. I want to ask you like more on the questions about world building. Um, remove all those tools about Incarnate and World Anvil and pretend we never really had those tools in the first place. I want to ask you, like, as let's say if you're a first time DM and you're asked create a world and you kind of don't know exactly what to think, how exactly did you or would you have gone about it? Like, where would you start? What questions would you ask yourself? And this is your first time DM, and like, give some tips on that one. Yeah.
Um, well, I mean, I'm sure Kiko can go in on this too. So I'm curious what he's going to say because he's fresh into building his his world. But when I did it, uh, truthfully, this is my honest answer. I just drew on a map and I was like,
Honestly, I see a lot of people just
I just
kind of thing. Yeah.
and you can do that. Or I mean, if you want something a bit more structured, there's a whole bunch of great templates of already built continents that you can just like fill in the names or fill in like your lore into it. Or like you just already have the lore. So it's whatever route like you want. Like that's what I like about D&D is it's as open as you want or as like it's already structured and you have it. It's whatever way you want to do it. And but for me personally, I just was like, well, let's make something interesting. I knew the type of what's it called, like regions and environments I want to have. Like I want to have deserts. I want to have a variety, so that way you can have a variety with your storytelling and the characters that you meet. So my thing is, land masses are probably the easiest thing to just kind of do whatever. But when it comes to the regions, I just knew I was like, well, I want some snow here. I want some desert here, and it was all for the purpose of the story in the end, like the stories that I want to tell. Like if you're into Viking lore and you want to be Nordic, you're probably going to want to be mostly like in a kind of Scotland or like Ireland kind of like snowy or a snowy place in general, like Norwegian kind of look. But if you want pirates, you're going to want a lot of open seas and islands. So it's kind of just, I would say, let the story lead your hand.
Yes, that's what I was gonna say. The big thing is when you're creating a world and like creating all the regions and everything, you always got to think of like how does this fit the purpose of your story? What kind of stories can you tell with this? And that should be your driving force for when you build anything in D&D. But like to go back down to the settlements, like in towns, like if you're going to be going super in depth and into detail, you got to know that you're going to be telling a substantive story with these towns. Like these towns in a way is going to be another character. You like you don't realize it at first, but the town is going to be a character. It's filled with NPCs, it's filled with like breathing like religions and like the cycles of life that's going there. So basically what you want to do is if you're going to make a town, for sure make it a place that your players are going to go to and make sure it fits a story purpose. And by figuring that out, you could figure out a lot of the things in your town very quickly, because then you could start thinking, okay, well, what are the people like there? What is the main religion there? Who is the overseer or king there? Who rules over everything? What is that town like to reacting to new people coming into the town? Are they receptive, or are they like they just hate people in general? Like you have no idea what is the dominant races and species there. Is that town known to be a mining town, a fishing town, or whatever? But like as long as you could all easily find that out when you are making your story and what that town fits for your story. So and it sounds like a lot, but once you figure out what story you want to tell with that town, everything falls into place.
So it's only a matter of like what questions do you ask yourself, and that was, I think, is the hard part of what I'm pointing out about my question. And I think thank you guys for that. I think it helped me out.
You're welcome. And I mean, and this is something actually I kind of want to bring up now too. I'm curious what you all think. I think it might be good for whoever ends up listening. But like, we all know that when it comes to DMing, like obviously it's a lot of planning. But let's talking about like the cities and settlements again. What is your mindset of when you don't plan and someone's like, oh, I want to go west or I want to go north, or what is this town? Like what's close to this city? And you've thought about the city obviously, but you're like, oh, I don't know if there's anything else outside there. So I have my own personal process, and it's taken a lot from advice that I've heard from like Matt Mercer and other people. But like I'm also curious, like what's your mentality when someone says, I want to go here, and you're like, cool, what is there? You know?
I'll let you go first, Kiko.
Okay. Well, for me, I don't know about other DMs, but I always tend to plan to at least have an idea of what the town is. Like, even though there's no details into it, like I have at least one sentence I've made that describes that town. And with that sentence, I can either improv my way through it, or either the characters or who else can just add whatever, you know, ideas, and that could fuel your imagination. That's what I usually do. Is I always have at least one sentence written out for each town, for what it is.
Mhm.
And that usually helps me out.
Nice.
Yeah. And for me, I do a little bit of both, but I'm gonna go on the opposite end just so I can talk about the other spectrum of that improv. I'm gonna go from the basis of, okay, you guys have already come from the basis of you have something kind of pre-planned, either a map that you can look to, that you can create something from improv, or you have an idea like a sentence or something. But I'm gonna go from, what if you don't have anything at all whatsoever? You had this one shot and you told them to go right and they went down, kind of thing. You know, players do that a lot. The biggest thing that I realize about my players is that they're actually very forgiving of what's going on. And when I say forgiving, I say, hey guys, just letting you know, this a bit of outside my comfort zone because I haven't really prepared this much. Let me just go on my laptop real quick and then check some things out. And then I go random city generator, random enter. Cool, that looks fun. All right, let me put this in. All right, and describing it like that. Like, that's totally normal. And because a lot of DMs do definitely don't go world, they go town that out, then you can use that to help build your world out. And in a way, like, let's say that there is a generator that has a picture of what looks to be Helm's Deep. You can literally just grab your idea of Helm's Deep and put that and then name that as Gravanosis Fortress or something. And you just flavor it because you have an inspiration. You can use other sources of material, especially if you don't have if you don't have anything to go from. You always will.
And also the DM trick of like, well, if you want to know, go there and find out.
And then you use that travel to just, shit, what do I do?
Well,
and sometimes your players will go there, or your players won't. But then sometimes people will just, if the question is generally just asked, like if they just ask you, what is going on in that town up north, and then you're like, well, you have to go there to find out. The NPC you're talking to has no idea. You have to go there to find out.
And you can try it, but I wouldn't risk asking them to roll a history check, just because that might.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So like, if you don't even know, don't even bother asking them for a history check.
Yeah.
Just tell them you have to go and find out, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and if we're gonna like have to mention like tips, and I think you guys both already gave like great tips like on like both of the degrees. Like one of my time building things for cities and settlements in particular, and my players, and which are also you guys, like you'll notice this, like I'll either do like the forgiving thing and I'll ask, okay, let me go back, let me make sure I have my lore if it is something that's prepared. But if it's not prepared, I do kind of like a combination of like both what like you do, Robin, and what you do, Kiko. Like I know the region enough that I'm like, well, this is near the coast, so it's going to most likely be a fishing village, or there's a lot of farmland, there's a lot of forests, so they'll probably have a lot of hunting going around. And then aside from doing that and building up some time and also allowing yourself to kind of just let your juices flowing, what I do is I just describe the sensory component of the setting. Like you'll hear me a lot.
Definitely helps out.
You'll hear me a lot where I'll just go into it, and even though I'm like, all I know is this place is icy, so let's start there. Now let's form here. Like what do you smell? Like what do you feel? What's the look of the people? What's the look of the buildings? And then it's not even that. It's just improv. It's like what you said. It's improv, and like you're building the scenes so that way they can see it, and then you in turn have unintentionally just did it in that little moment, just with the basic stuff that you planned, but by letting yourself just speak with what you envision and you see with your senses. That's a great time building routes. So I'm always like, just use your 5 senses and go.
Yeah. Also, too, if you already have like part of your map already built out, or you already have an idea that you have for another city or something, and you haven't shown your players your full map yet, or they have no idea, feel free to just shift one city over to its new spot now. just go ahead and do that. Like your players have no idea. and
They would
you have
know.
another place that you know more about that you could give them an adventure in. So it's a win-win there.
Yeah, that's why you're referred to as like the dungeon master. Like
Yeah.
you have the right to flip your world and move it around
Dungeon God.
in
Yeah.
the way that you need to. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So
I actually do have another kind of question. I'm kind of pivoting from the tips and tricks of world building, and I kind of want to ask you guys just because, in a way, it is harder to answer this question, but I want to know like, what mistakes have you guys made? Like stories of mistakes you guys have made doing world building. Like, oh shit, I should have done that when it comes to world building. You can take your time.
oh,
It may be hard to answer.
okay. Sometimes, okay, so there's one end of the spectrum, which is a lot of parties do. They don't explore your town as much as you think they would. Like a lot of times
Yeah.
they don't. A lot of times they just go to 3 different places and then that's it. Like the 3 main places: the inn / tavern, the whatever religious church there is, and they go shopping. So you just gotta remember like some blacksmithing or enchantment alchemy place. That's
Mhm.
usually where most people think of.
Yeah.
But then for me, sometimes it's kind of like you get the other side of the story where they ask for where's the police station, where's the hospital, where's the almshouse, where's all this stuff, and then from there you kind of the best way of putting it into it is improv it. If you know your town better than anybody else,
Yeah.
and it would make, and then you could say whether or not your town does have that, and just improv your way to be like, oh yeah, it's up north, up to the east, up to the west, south, whatever it's going to be. That's because let's be honest here, not every DM has planned out, no matter how good they are, they have never planned out every single square footage of every town, every space, and all parts of their map. It's always a continuously growing, adapting world.
I mean, maybe Matt Mercer. I'm kidding now.
Yeah.
He's only human as well.
Yeah, I mean, there are going to be DMs who are more prepared than others for sure.
Yeah,
But you'll always catch, there'll always be players who will catch a DM by surprise with, oh, what's this place? And then they hit you with, what's the name? And then you're like, and then depending on who you are, either you use name generators on the spot, which I've seen a couple DMs do where they have like, they literally put their phone or their iPad right behind the screen, and it's just a name generator.
Yeah.
Thing, click it. And then there's other people who just like are able to just boom, hit it off the top of the head, like what it is. But the problem is for your DMs who do it off the top of your head, you got to remember that name you just said, because if not,
you got to be consistent.
because then you stop being consistent and then things fall apart a little bit.
And they call you out on it every time.
Especially the players who take notes. If you just say a random name, they're gonna be like, and you're gonna be like, oh shit, okay, well, I gotta remember that name now.
Mm-hmm. Lex?
Well, when it comes to mistakes, I think consistency has a tendency of being the one I try my best to not avoid, and to avoid overall, is that like if you flub up on the consistency, then like it's gonna throw your whole storytelling like out like the window. Mm-hmm. So I've had a few moments where I'm like, ooh, I gotta go back. So yeah, my big thing is take notes yourself as a DM and always write them down, and know where to look. Otherwise, you're gonna have no idea like what town you're talking about, or like they're like, hey, let's go back to this place, and you're like, wait, what? What is that? Oh yeah, we made that town like 2 years ago, and we spent like 2 days, like 2 sessions in it, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, and I mean that's my biggest thing, is that I think if there was regrets or mistakes, it's I didn't take enough notes, and I forgot to plot when I established something, either notes or like plot it on your map, because then it's great if you have the town, but then you're like, where did I put that town? Is it here, or is it, yeah? So
then that's why you have a map to do that. And yeah, and in a way, like that's also one of my mistakes as part of my very first campaign, is I in a way created a city. I actually my party went through a bunch of different cities in general, just because they love to travel and they don't really care about the other plot hooks, because they just want to murder hobos, the usual kind of parties. And I didn't realize this, but I have a tendency to create the same damn city over and over again. And then like, wait, is this Golof, or is this Rogo? I don't know. It's all the same thing. They have the same they have the same kind of mayor who's a very pudgy guy. They have the same kind of bartender who's a half orc, kind of beat up looking person. They have this. Yeah, it's. I realized that I was repeating the same things, and I get made fun of for that, but I cannot realize. And that was like my world building mistake. Is like the way to fix that is to actually try to plan out more than just settlements. Try to see if you can write down any ideas and use your sources. I relied too much on my improv to the point where I relied on my habits. I got called out for it, and I'm like, I'm learning now.
Yeah, no, that's actually a great point. Like what you said right now with the whole like falling into the trap of making the same cities over and over again is
Yeah.
is like a big thing that nobody really thinks about too much until
Yeah.
it happens to them.
Over and over,
And
yeah.
to me, like what really helps that is making sure that you know that every city has a different theme to it.
Mhm.
And having that different theme to it definitely adds a spice to it. Okay, quick thing. This is also an inspiration from one of Lex's campaigns, campaign side stories.
You're like blushing right
One
now,
great
Lex.
thing about it is you don't just think, okay, so you have your first level, which I call my first level, which is like what type of main profession is in that town? Are they miners? Are they fishers? Are they just
What's the basis?
woodworkers? And that it's like the main thing that drives that town, and that sometimes a lot of times creates a different kind of personality trait for what those people value, and that creates a whole different environment for your players as well. Another thing is what I call level 2 is a little deeper. It's a little deeper than that. Don't just change the theme of like what that town profession's like, but also change you could even change the theme of your entire like campaign. Instead of it being cheery and happy, that town's kind of horrifying.
Yeah.
Like that
It's
town
like
could be very scary, or that town could be very like adrenaline filled awesome, or that town could be like literally desolate and filled with ghosts. Who knows? Like, and one of the things that Lex has done for me, in one of his campaigns, and what I've done for one of my one shots was you literally made a Twilight Zone style town that where everybody in that town is kind of like mind controlled and the players don't know it. And then you create like an era of mystery, and you create that era of like suspense, and a lot of times that will carry a lot of your story, and that will carry your session for sure. And people will not remember that town as a regular town. I still have like not nightmares, but I still have like my character has scars from visiting that town, and I carry it on with this current campaign that's happening right
Well,
now.
okay, so that wasn't that wasn't love letter one shot then, right? I thought that was the love letter one
No,
shot.
that was I used what Lex has done for one of the sessions for his campaign, and I reinterpreted it and I changed it a little bit, and I did it for my one shot.
Okay, gotcha. That makes sense. See, inspiration. Lex?
well, yeah, and I think thank you, because I love. I mean, it's very humbling to hear that, so thank you. And like I, that's the thing too, is that I think it's just going back to what we've already said. It's the story that you want to tell, because at the end of the day, even no matter what, like the characters or the settings, it's all about the story that you want to tell in that moment. Um, I've built fantastical places because I knew, like, when they get there, I was like, I just want them to explore and have fun. Or like Kiko, in the instance, the thing, I was like, I knew this guy is a government guy, he's an investigator, or like he does things. What are things that they felt they do? Well, what's going to be one of their most memorable cases? And that was literally my mindset. I was like, what's a way to make it a memorable case
Mm-hmm.
and make it kind of dark and make it kind of happy? And then I've done things where, like, I built a zoo and I let you just roam around and go to a theme park. And like that, it's all about the intent of what you want to do, like for the players in each moment, and hopefully give them variety. And so I think, I mean, we all go down the writer trope of, we have our things. I have certain like sounds that even that I like to go with. I like to
Your go-tos.
lots of my towns like to end with wood a lot, so or stuff like that. But I think it's when you get the regions, and if you on like already think ahead that, like, hey, I want this to have this kind of look and feel, then it'll automatically shift your storytelling, because you can't tell a relaxing beach story when you're in a mountainous, snowy region that's been known to have wild beasts roaming around,
Yeah.
without any control. Like, it'll automatically be like, oh well, then I can't make that same trope. I can't make the same kind of inn because it'll be different. and then like what Kiko said about it'll also affect the characters. So it all just has a domino effect.
One big thing too I was going to add on to that was that if you're going to be keeping the story in that same town for a long time, and you know that a lot of your campaign or your storytelling is going to take place in a town, sometimes something I've seen Lex do, and then another DM who I'm playing with currently does, is they make a multi-tier town where there are areas that are rich, and then there are areas that are middle class, and there are areas that are poor. So each section has a different feeling to it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And even if you're in the same city, you not only is there a different feeling to it, you can help build a different feeling by having that character who may be treated differently in one region compared to another, still in the same city. And you can flavor that as whatever you want. It'll just build up to the experience right there. I actually have that in my own campaign. And in that campaign, one of the races are racist. And there is that person in that group, and one of them are like kind of subjugated, they're the object of the racism. And I was able to show them like the different interactions because they once went through like all those regions. I'm having so much fun with it just because I'm able to flavor this from past experiences and just helping build the city itself as they go through it. You don't have to build the whole city, you just build it around them.
Well,
Yes.
and I think you made a really good point of using the character at that point, like using the players, because there are definitely times when I made a setting and I was like, this is particularly for this character. Like, yeah, there's definitely things that everyone, because you have to make it something that everyone in the party can hopefully attach to in
Yeah.
some way. So that way
Spotlight them.
they intrigued. But if you know that you want to spotlight a character for this session, like, hey, this is my paladin session. This is my gnome rogues session. Like, then you're gonna make a sneaky place. You're gonna give them like things that they want to go through, or like you said, give them a political situation. Like they don't follow that religion there. They do follow that religion. They have a thing against them, or it'll help really with building your story.
I do have another question and a way of pivot to the whole using the players as a way to create your world. I wanted to ask what your guys' thoughts of a collaborative campaign. For I'm doing that with my current campaign. What I'm trying to do is before I do a general flat slate, blank slate of a world, not too much detail to it, but I actually do the session 0 with the players and ask them, what is it about your character? Where would their hometown be? What kind of hometown would it be? And help contribute to that world that you're building with them. What do you guys think about that kind of idea?
Yeah, that's actually a really good idea. Like, I mean, especially if you're going to be setting some ground rules on like, what themes are people cool with? Because some people are cool with horror, some people are not cool with horror. So it's a good way of talking to your players and making sure you all kind of have an idea of like what are the do's and don'ts for this for your sessions, and that really helps for keeping your players in your game and also making everyone have a good time, letting everybody have a good time. So having a session 0 for that I believe is pretty important.
Okay, the collaborative world building, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's pros and cons to it. The only con for that I would see, and honestly, this is not saying like don't do collaborative sessions, is that when you do have a collaborative session, sometimes it might end up being samey towns sometimes, and sometimes it will pigeonhole you into having to play to one thing sometimes.
Yeah.
But for the most part, that's like the worst part about it. I'd rather have that than making your players feel uncomfortable.
Lex?
Well, with mine is that I'm not against collaboration. So that's what I'm gonna start with.
It's all good. It's all good.
But I'm trying to word it right.
Yeah.
My problem with if you do it too open, here's the thing: if it's too open of collaboration, because there should, no matter what, collaboration is key in the game to make it work. If you can't not respond to the players, and you can't not use them as resources, because then the game will just, there's no point in the game because the player doesn't have a hand in it. But when it comes to the structure of the story and like the world, you want to be careful, because then if you have all these multiple ideas. Aside from the fact that you might end up unintentionally make something that the players are uncomfortable with, you
Yeah.
just might make something that doesn't make sense anymore. Like the feel and tone that you're trying to stick with, it won't stick. I mean, this happens in film series when, like you have multiple writers try to continue one story, but they have
Different ideas for it.
different views, and then it just becomes a jumble. Whereas if you have one main story, that's like the basic of like this is the rule of the world, this is how this works, but I don't have every town fixed up. I don't have every culture fixed up, and that's what allows the players to collab. That's what I do. So I prefer, and I think anyone can go with whatever route they want. I prefer that there should be some base. There should actually be like some boundaries. So that way the collab can actually happen in a more stabilized way.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And for me as well, it's how do, this is how I did it with my campaign, because my ongoing campaign is, you could call it a collaborative campaign, collaborative world building, because I ask a lot from my players. I actually love it when my players have very comprehensive backstories because it helps me feel stuff out. And I asked them, hey, this is how the world is. There are names here. Just letting you know, I do not know any of the names. Well, I know the names. I don't know what each of the names are. I know some of them because of some idea that I have. And then this is kind of like the common lore of the thing that I made up on the spot. And I asked them, do you guys like the way I laid this out? And then from there, we make sure that we establish some things like rules that we have when it comes to, hey, is one race superior to another? All that good stuff. And from there, I told them, put whatever you want in your backstory, but what I'm going to do also is look at it and see how it can fit into the world as well. Pretty much, how would you like to influence the world? And this is your way of collaborating. And then I'll pick and choose, and then we'll talk about it. And then from there, they have their own sort of secret in that world that I drop in as a hint, and one person will react, "Oh my God, this is that thing that I made," and everyone's like, "What are you talking about?" And I would say, "Please explain," and then he just laid it all out, and it's fine because I approved of it. And then this is one way of a player collaborating to the world itself. The hardest part about that, and not the hardest part, I guess a good con, yeah, is it sucks to be on the same page with everyone, especially if you have maybe 4 to 6 players all trying to curate this one world that you have. And in a way, it leaves some of the secrets out. Like there are less secrets than you would like, as if you're creating it your own. That's just how I experienced things when I was doing the DMing. But I use the players as my inspiration, and that was a great idea from my end, in my opinion.
With that being said, we're going to move on to having tell a quick story about like a fun town that you remember in any of your D&D sessions. So, starting it off, Lex.
Okay. Well,
Thank you. I wasn't
I,
ready.
I will go ahead and refer to the ones that Kiko has referenced because I think he's referenced it like in 2 of our little podcast thingies. But so my town was called Palewood. Oh, look, woods at the end of the name. But again, I knew I wanted to make it mysterious and all that. But I think what I loved about it was, I'm a big fan of H.P. Lovecraft and Twilight Zone, so he definitely picked up on my references. But I knew that I loved the mystery of like what it like bliss really being the more terrifying thing, like ultimate bliss being a terrifying thing in its own, like everyone being happy. And I knew that I want him to look to peek under the surface, like, okay, is this a spell? Is this something else? And then when he gets literally under the surface of the town, he finds out, oh, it's like even darker than that. And it basically ended up being a town that had turned to a demonic entity and brought them from a different plane to help enrich their crops at the expense of them having to sacrifice people in the town every now and then. And I mean, it's a common trope that's been
Damn.
used every time. But when you get that trope and you just put it there because you like it and you understand to use it and you kind of flavored it your own way, which makes it your own personal DM thing, then the moment the player comes in and starts to do their own thing, that's when it becomes purely collaborative because and that's what I loved. I think we've all touched on this multiple things, but that's what made it really memorable. Was I got to give a shout out to the things that influenced me horror wise. Um, Build this character's background to give him one like side characters that he still interacts with to this day, and give him story development, and then also, let him choose the result of what happens in that town, because it could have ended very bad. Like the demon could have still been there. They may have been like, oh, it's fine, and just left. But that's what I loved about that D&D in general, is that I didn't know what was going to happen, and it just so happened they cured it. Well, we don't know. He's never gone back. But yeah, so that's definitely one of my favorite towns. Also, Deadwood. I've been watching it. So
Undeadwood.
no, Deadwood.
Oh,
Like
Deadwood in
the
general.
actual
Oh, okay.
show, Deadwood.
Oh, that one.
Yeah.
Good job.
That's
So,
the
yeah.
inspiration. So Kiko, your question was, what was been your favorite town or city or
Just like
settlement?
quick stories about some of the favorite towns you've played through in your experiences as either a DM or as a player.
Okay, I'm gonna guess up Lex again because you guys already know what I'm going to talk about, and that is the love letter one shot. No, it's not one shot. The love letter session. It's just so just for context, for the players, for the people who don't know about our 2-year ongoing campaign together, we there's about 5 of us. 1, 2, 3, yeah, 5 people that pretty much the characters themselves got transported into an alternate reality where the characters play the players themselves. And that was the way it was described, is that when the DM was looking at us, he's literally describing what we're looking like in our webcams. And I was like, oh God, is this what it's gonna be? And upon further just travel, we realized, holy shit, he created our world, like our actual Earth, and where our town is in our town. I'm not gonna say the name yet, I mean, for privacy purposes. But he created that, and I'm like, holy crap, we are doing D&D stuff in that town. And to me, that is so original, just because I've never even heard a DM do that. Plus, he made it different enough that there is a futuristic twist to it, but he still let us use our abilities, and we have the liberty to reskin them and flavor them however we like. Like, for example, I'm a cleric and I cast guidance like I'm throwing candy to a baby. So whenever I cast guidance to someone, because it's futuristic, it's not medieval, I pretty much grab this sort of injection thing and just jammed it into someone, and I just keep jamming to people, and I'm like, that's not just world building. That's great storytelling right there. But just the way you built it, the way you laid it out for us, it's like you gave them just enough information that you got us to realize what we're in, and we kind of we paved the road and you just guided us through. And it made us feel like we're the ones that are creating the story and that you're telling us the story. You gave us a good plot, but that's my favorite session in terms of world building, because it's just so unique, it's so unexpected, and I've never really heard it done from any other DMs before.
Thank you.
Awesome. For me, obviously, I've already talked a lot about your session, Lex. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about another town that I really, really, really love. And this is one from a different group that I play with. And it is amazing because the setting itself is that we are in a still pastime area, but it's a little bit more futuristic. Like, it's like Legend of Korra, like type of thing. And the town is pretty much run by different mafia families. And and it's amazing because
That's
every
great.
little thing done in that town and everything you do feels like a chess game. You kill one person here, you talk to one person there, you find connections in like a flower shop, you find connections in a whole cab system. Like it's like this ever evolving town of like and currently in the story, there's a turf war that's happening, like an underground turf war that's happening. So every little thing is done like a chess game. And the whole thing of like you're playing the mob style thing of, you know, you gotta whack somebody, or people are trying to one up each other on tech and selling things on the street, whether it be drugs or technology.
Yeah.
And then the way he uses magical items, like uncommon and common magical items, to fit the world is kind of crazy. I know this is going to sound really dark, but there was one story where our characters were trying to save this guy who was going to get whacked. And the way they whacked him was that they brought him over to a water filtration system, and they were going to dump him into the river, and then we were going to go grab him in the river before like he died, right?
That's tight.
What we didn't know was that they were going to drown him standing up, like
Whoa.
as in he used, I believe, like some sort of like wand of like water, some sort of like water wand type of thing.
Yeah.
And they used it to constantly put it in his mouth and constantly put pressure into it and kept it going, like as if you were running a faucet through somebody's mouth,
It's waterboarding. It's like waterboarding.
It's past waterboarding because there's no thing covering them. It's just like in their mouths, and then you're choking them.
Oh, that's
and
insane.
And we were like, we didn't expect that. We're like, what the fuck? And it's like, yeah, these guys are efficient. And then like you could tell, like with this world building, they have like vehicle like things. They have their town operates and runs on drugs and different like contraband. And then you have like mob hits left and right. And then you have a turf war that's going on. Nothing in that town feels safe. Some of the cops are paid off, and some of the cops are dirty. Some of the cops aren't dirty. And then you got like a whole like what's it called? The Untouchables thing going on right now with our crew.
I have a lot of questions because it's so very unique, but I'll let go ahead and finish.
That is one of my favorite towns that I've played in for sure, and like that I've ever played in, and I'm still currently playing in that session too. So shout out to that DM if you know who you are and you watch this, then you know. But yeah, that is one story for sure. With that being said, this is our quick part 1 world building on towns and settlements. Hopefully the people who have watched this have gotten more knowledge about how to make a settlement, what goes into kind of settlements, and just the overall theme. Don't sweat it too much. You just have those ideas and those stories, and everything writes itself out.
Yeah.
Any last words from my other two guests / hosts?
Go ahead, Lex.
I say, if you make the town a character, and it's in that a character in your story, then you'll be fine.
Yeah. My other thing is that trust yourself, trust the players, and if you can't trust either, trust the internet. There's a lot of generators out there that you can just use as a resource.
That's true.
Yeah.
If you are stuck in making a town, take inspiration from everything: books, TV, movies. You'll find something.
You'll find your flow. You'll find your flow.
Don't be afraid.
Okay. All right.
Okay. With that being said, we're gonna close it here. And thank you guys for listening, enjoying. Hopefully you guys can like, comment, share, subscribe, whatever you guys have to do. Hopefully this gets around. Hopefully we helped you guys out. And be sure to catch our part 2 for more world building stuff, or we'll talk about other things. Who knows? Because let's be honest here, we're riding off the seat of our pants, and we're just a bunch of DMs that love to talk in the PM. So,
Hey.
Good night, guys.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye, buddy.